The evening began with dazzling lights and fake smiles. From the balcony overlooking the grand ballroom of Delaney Grand, I watched the glamorous guests sip champagne, their laughter hollow beneath the glittering chandeliers. It was my father's 60th birthday, an event carefully orchestrated by Victoria, my stepmother, to flaunt our family's wealth and power. I stood quietly in my sleek evening gown, feeling oddly disconnected from it all, as if observing someone else's life unfold below. Beside the marble staircase, my stepbrother Blake swaggered confidently, whispering jokes to Victoria, their laughter cutting sharply through the background hum of conversation. At 25, Blake had never lifted a finger to contribute to our family's hotel empire, preferring late-night parties and endless vacations funded by my father's fortune. But tonight, an unsettling anticipation hung thick in the air. Just as the clock struck 9, my father stepped onto the raised stage, adjusting his tailored suit as he tapped the microphone lightly. A hush fell over the ballroom. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for celebrating this special occasion with us tonight," he began smoothly. "As you all know, Delaney Hotels has grown tremendously in recent years, and our success requires clear leadership and a strong vision for the future." He paused, scanning the crowd, his eyes briefly meeting mine. For a heartbeat, I felt reassured, recalling his promise. 5 years of endless work, sleepless nights, and unwavering dedication, all building towards this moment. And so, tonight I'm honored to announce the new CEO of Delaney Hotels, my son, Blake Delaney. Gasps filled the room, followed by polite applause. My world tilted violently. I gripped the balcony railing, knuckles white with shock, trying desperately to steady myself as Blake flashed a triumphant grin at Victoria, who raised her champagne glass toward him. My heart shattered silently within my chest, and I realized that every promise my father had ever made to me had been nothing more than an empty lie. I felt my pulse pounding in my ears as my vision blurred. For a moment, the lavish ballroom seemed to fade, replaced by the echo of my father's empty promises. Gathering my strength, I forced myself upright, descending the marble staircase gracefully, determined not to give Blake or Victoria the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. My father stood near the stage, accepting shallow congratulations from people who'd eagerly anticipated a different announcement. Blake caught sight of me approaching, his smile widening with arrogant pleasure. "Emily," he drawled, extending his arms dramatically, "I assume you're thrilled for me. After all, it's for the family's good." I held his gaze, my voice cold and steady. "The family's good or yours, Blake?" He chuckled softly, unfazed. "Same thing, isn't it?" My father cleared his throat uncomfortably, placing a tentative hand on my shoulder. "Emily, I hope you understand this decision. Blake has new ideas, fresh perspectives." I met his eyes, desperately searching for the father who once held me proudly, promising this empire would one day be mine. 5 years, Dad. I rebuilt hotels, secured clients, brought profits back from disaster. Was none of that enough? "Please, Emily," Victoria interjected smoothly, slipping her manicured fingers through my father's arm. "This isn't personal. Blake's approach aligns better with our future vision. For 5 years, I had sacrificed everything, relationships, dreams, and personal happiness, for my father's approval, only to have it stolen effortlessly by Victoria and Blake. But beneath the pain and betrayal, a spark ignited, burning stronger than my despair. They'd taken my inheritance, yes, but not my determination, not my skills, my knowledge, or the quiet strength I'd inherited from my grandmother, Eleanor Delaney. If my father thought I'd surrender quietly, he was gravely mistaken. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Less than 15 minutes later, Hannah's familiar silver sedan pulled sharply into the hotel's driveway, headlights cutting through the darkness. She rushed toward me, concern etched across her face, wrapping me in a fierce, comforting embrace. "Emily, I'm so sorry," she whispered, pulling back slightly to study my face carefully. I can't believe your father would do something like this. I sighed heavily, feeling my shoulders sag with exhaustion. Neither can I. I trusted him, Hannah. I truly believed all those late nights and sacrifices meant something to him. They should have, Hannah replied, anger flashing briefly in her eyes. What did he even say? Did he give you a reason? I shook my head bitterly. Just empty words about new ideas and fresh perspectives. Victoria and Blake manipulated him completely. I feel like such a fool. No, Hannah said firmly, gripping my shoulders gently. You're the smartest, hardest working person I know. They don't deserve you, and deep down they know it. I tried a weak smile, but tears blurred my vision. Maybe, but it doesn't change the fact that Blake now controls the company I pour my heart into. Emily, Hannah said softly, glancing cautiously over her shoulder before lowering her voice. You need to talk to Richard. Tonight. I frowned in confusion. Richard, the family lawyer? Why? She hesitated briefly, choosing her words carefully. Remember the day your grandmother, Eleanor, passed away? He mentioned something important, a secret provision she included in her will. He told you to come to him if anything strange ever happened with the inheritance. My pulse quickened. A secret provision? Are you sure? Why didn't I know about this? Because your grandmother insisted it remain secret unless absolutely necessary, Hannah said urgently. Emily, call him now. Trust me, you need to hear what he has to say. Without another thought, I reached for my phone and dialed Richard's number, my heart thundering in my chest. After several tense rings, his calm, measured voice answered. Emily? I've been expecting your call. His tone was gentle, but filled with gravity. Meet me at my office in 30 minutes. There's something your grandmother left specifically for you. Something your father doesn't know. A strange mixture of hope and apprehension flooded through me. I ended the call and glanced at Hannah, who gave me a reassuring nod. Let's go, I said, feeling strength return to my voice. It's time to find out what my grandmother knew all along. 30 minutes later, Hannah and I stepped into Richard's quiet, dimly lit office, its dark mahogany bookshelves lined with thick volumes of legal texts. Richard greeted me warmly, his gray eyes softening with genuine sympathy. Emily, I'm truly sorry about tonight, he said gently, guiding us to a pair of plush, leather chairs facing his large oak desk. Eleanor feared something like this might happen. That's why she asked me to prepare. Prepare what exactly? I asked cautiously, my heartbeat quickening. Richard walked slowly to a locked cabinet, retrieving a sealed envelope. Returning to his desk, he sat down and carefully slid it toward me. Your grandmother anticipated Victoria's influence on your father. She knew Blake would never earn the empire, but she also understood your father's blind spots when it came to Victoria. So she took precautions. I picked up the envelope with trembling fingers, feeling its weight more heavily than mere paper should allow. I carefully broke the seal, removing a folded document that bore Eleanor Delaney's unmistakably elegant handwriting. My dearest Emily, if you're reading this, then my fears have come true. You've lost your rightful inheritance to manipulation and betrayal, but it is not the end. I've left you something that can't be stolen so easily. My eyes flew upward, meeting Richard's steady gaze. What exactly is she referring to? He smiled softly, leaning forward slightly. A forgotten hotel, Emily, the Evergreen Inn, in the city's historic district. It belonged solely to your grandmother, kept separate from Delaney hotels. Officially closed 5 years ago, its existence is unknown to your father and Victoria. Hannah's eyes widened in surprise. An entire hotel? Eleanor owned it privately? Richard nodded slowly. Eleanor purchased it decades ago, quietly maintaining it until just before her death. Her instructions were clear. If you lost your inheritance unfairly, the Evergreen Inn would pass directly to you. But there's a catch. A catch? I echoed, already sensing what he'd say next. You must restore the hotel fully and turn it into a profitable enterprise within 1 year, he continued seriously. Only then will Eleanor's complete fortune, assets worth millions, officially become yours. A wave of determination surged through me, mingling with anxiety. And what if I fail? Richard sighed softly. Then the inheritance remains locked away indefinitely. Your grandmother wanted to ensure that you wouldn't just survive this betrayal, but truly thrive because of it. Hannah squeezed my hand reassuringly. Emily, you can do this. You've rebuilt hotels before. This is exactly the opportunity you deserve. I took a deep breath, the room feeling strangely lighter, filled with new possibilities. What about my father? Victoria? Blake? They won't let me succeed easily. Richard's expression hardened slightly. Precisely why your grandmother insisted we keep this completely secret. They can't sabotage what they don't know. I stood slowly, feeling strength return to my limbs, a fierce determination growing inside me. Then I'll do it. I'll transform the Evergreen Inn, not just to reclaim what's mine, but to honor Eleanor's faith in me. Richard smiled warmly, pride glowing softly in his eyes. She always believed in you, Emily. Now it's time for you to believe in yourself. As Hannah and I left the office, stepping out into the cool night air, the distant lights of the city seemed brighter, full of hope rather than betrayal. Blake and Victoria had stolen my inheritance once, but now they'd unknowingly handed me the chance to build something even greater. They were about to learn a harsh lesson about betrayal. It cuts both ways. Early the next morning, Hannah and I stood in front of the Evergreen Inn, staring up at its faded grandeur. The old Victorian building was nestled on a quiet, tree-lined street in the historic district, once the vibrant heart of the city, but now overshadowed by newer developments. Ivy climbed the weathered stone facade, its windows darkened from neglect, and the once elegant front door hung slightly crooked. Yet despite its neglected state, I felt an undeniable warmth, a sense of possibility. It's beautiful, Hannah whispered, breaking the silence. Needs a lot of work, though. It's more than that, I replied softly, stepping closer and running my hand across the carved wooden banister leading up to the entrance. It's my chance to reclaim what's been taken from me. Just then, a sleek black SUV slowed down behind us, its window rolling down smoothly to reveal Blake's unmistakable smug expression. My stomach tightened instantly. Well, look who it is. Blake called out mockingly. Scoping out a new career in real estate, Emily? I'd advise something smaller, considering your limited abilities. Hannah stiffened beside me, but I placed a calming hand on her arm, forcing a composed smile. Don't you have a company to run into the ground, Blake? Or has Victoria finally realized you're only good for spending money, not making it? His smile faltered, eyes narrowing slightly. Careful, Emily. If you're not interested in working under me, I suggest you watch your step around town. Wouldn't want your reputation suffering any further. Oh, Blake, I said lightly, maintaining an air of calm authority. The only reputation that's at risk right now is yours. Good luck convincing investors that Delaney Hotels is still in capable hands. His eyes flashed dangerously, but he said nothing more, accelerating sharply and disappearing down the street. Hannah turned toward me with a mixture of admiration and concern. He's going to be trouble, Emily. He won't let this go easily. I nodded slowly, eyes fixed firmly on the inn's faded sign, determination strengthening my voice. Let him try. Blake has money and power, but he lacks something crucial: experience and determination. He thinks he's won, but this battle isn't even close to finished. With renewed resolve, I took out the rusted keys Richard had handed me last night, inserting them carefully into the lock. The heavy door creaked open, revealing a dusty but elegant foyer, sunlight filtering through stained glass windows in muted hues of amber and sapphire. Though neglected, the grandeur beneath the dust spoke volumes. Solid wood floors, a grand staircase spiraling upward, and ornate chandeliers waiting to shine again. Hannah took a deep breath, turning to me with an enthusiastic smile. "Where do we start?" "Right here," I replied firmly, stepping confidently across the threshold. "One room at a time. We're going to rebuild this place, not just as a profitable business, but as proof that I won't be broken by Blake or Victoria." I ran my fingertips along the dusty banister, feeling strangely connected to Eleanor, who had quietly safeguarded this opportunity. They took what belonged to me once. This time, I'll make sure they never take anything from me again. Behind us, the door closed with a decisive echo. The past was sealed away, and ahead lay nothing but possibility, determination, and sweet revenge. Over the following weeks, Hannah and I immersed ourselves completely into the transformation of the Evergreen Inn. Mornings began before sunrise, filled with endless calls to contractors, designers, and suppliers. Every afternoon, we'd inspect progress, supervising each detail meticulously, from restoring the original hardwood floors to installing elegant, energy-efficient lighting. Slowly, the forgotten inn began to emerge from years of neglect, reclaiming its former charm while proudly embracing a new eco-friendly identity. Meanwhile, whispers began circulating through Delaney Hotel's elite circles. Stories about Blake's reckless spending habits and questionable business decisions. Occasionally, my phone buzzed with messages from former employees, loyal workers whom I'd trained myself, expressing frustration at Blake's leadership. I resisted responding, determined to stay focused on my own path, letting the truth reveal itself without my interference. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low behind the city skyline, Hannah appeared in the renovated dining room, her face flushed with excitement. "Emily, you won't believe this," she exclaimed breathlessly. "I just got a call from Alex Carter. He represents the travel group Elite Escapes. They heard rumors about our boutique hotel's reopening and want an exclusive partnership." My heart skipped a beat. Elite Escapes was one of the most influential luxury travel groups in the industry. Landing a partnership with them would catapult the Evergreen Inn into prominence immediately. "Did he say what sparked their interest?" I asked, hardly daring to breathe. "They loved the concept, eco-luxury, boutique charm, and personalized experiences. But there's more," Hannah added cautiously, lowering her voice slightly. "He also mentioned that Delaney Hotels recently lost their contract due to quality issues. Blake's reputation is starting to hurt them badly." I paused thoughtfully, emotions twisting sharply within me. While part of me felt a grim satisfaction at Blake's failures finally becoming public, another part felt a painful twinge for my father's legacy slowly eroding beneath Blake's arrogance and incompetence. "What should we do?" Hannah asked, watching me closely. I took a deep breath, my decision clear. Arrange the meeting. If Delaney Hotels lost this partnership due to Blake's mistakes, it's not our fault. We've earned this opportunity through hard work and vision. It's time the world sees exactly what we've built here. Just as we finished speaking, my phone vibrated insistently. The screen displayed a familiar number, Victoria. I hesitated briefly, my finger hovering uncertainly above the decline button. But something compelled me to answer, curiosity outweighing caution. "Emily," Victoria's voice dripped with false sweetness. "I think it's time you and I had a private conversation." "About what exactly?" I replied, coldly, instantly wary. "About your future," she said, smoothly. "Blake and your father are unaware I'm contacting you, and I'd prefer to keep it that way for now. Meet me tonight at Delaney Grand. It's in your best interests, trust me." As she disconnected abruptly, a sense of foreboding crept up my spine. Hannah looked at me sharply, sensing my unease. "Emily, don't trust her. Whatever Victoria wants, it can't be good." "I know," I admitted quietly, staring out the inn's restored windows into the deepening twilight. "But maybe it's time to confront her head-on. She betrayed me once. This might be my chance to turn her own game against her." I glanced around at the beautifully transformed Evergreen Inn, strength surging through me again. Victoria had manipulated my father, stolen my inheritance, and nearly broken me. But now the balance of power had shifted. Tonight, I'd make sure she finally understood exactly who she was dealing with. That evening, the Delaney Grand felt colder than I remembered. As I entered the lavish hotel lobby, memories of betrayal rushed back, echoing in the empty halls. Victoria waited in a private corner near the grand piano, dressed impeccably in deep burgundy silk, her expression unreadable beneath the elegant facade. "Emily, I'm glad you came," she began smoothly, gesturing gracefully for me to sit across from her. "I assume you're aware of the recent troubles Blake's been facing." I settled into the chair opposite her, maintaining my composure. "Blake's incompetence isn't exactly news. Why are you suddenly concerned?" Victoria's lips tightened briefly, betraying a rare moment of genuine frustration. "Because his mistakes are beginning to threaten everything your father worked for. Clients are abandoning us, investors are nervous, and your father is finally realizing his error." I tilted my head slightly, studying her carefully. "So, you invited me here secretly to, apologize? Admit you were wrong." She laughed softly, humorlessly. "Hardly. I invited you here because we both know Blake's days as CEO are numbered. Your father regrets his decision. He's quietly searching for ways to correct the situation without humiliating himself publicly. And let me guess, you want my help cleaning up the mess Blake made?" I interrupted sharply, barely concealing my disgust. "Victoria, you betrayed me. You manipulated my father and robbed me of everything I earned." "Yes," she admitted coldly, dropping any pretense of charm. "I did, and it worked until Blake ruined everything. Now we have a mutual enemy. Help me remove Blake, and I promise your father will give you back control." A bitter laugh escaped me, genuine and harsh. "Control of what? A sinking ship that you sabotaged." She leaned forward, eyes sharp. "You have the skills and connections to fix this. Imagine reclaiming the empire that should have been yours, proving everyone wrong." I shook my head slowly, suddenly seeing clearly the desperate cracks in her carefully crafted armor. "You still don't understand, do you? I don't need your sinking empire. I've built something stronger, something that neither you nor Blake can touch." Her eyes narrowed dangerously. "That little boutique hotel? Emily, don't be naive. You'll never survive against the Delaney brand, even weakened as it is." I stood slowly, looking down at her calmly. "Actually, Victoria, I'm already thriving, while your world crumbles beneath Blake's recklessness. Your desperation tonight only proves how fragile your position truly is." For the first time, genuine fear flashed briefly in her eyes before vanishing behind her polished mask. "Emily, wait!" "No," I interrupted firmly. "The only thing you'll ever receive from me is the pleasure of watching me succeed where you failed." Turning sharply, I left her sitting alone beneath the glittering lights of the lobby, her desperate gaze burning into my back. Outside, the city air filled my lungs crisp and cleansing. Victoria and Blake had tried everything: deception, betrayal, manipulation, but they had underestimated me every step of the way. As I walked confidently toward my waiting car, a message lit up my phone screen. "Alex Carter from Elite Escapes confirmed our partnership meeting scheduled for tomorrow morning." A victorious smile curved my lips. Victoria had unknowingly handed me the final piece I needed. Proof that Delaney Hotels was imploding from within. It was no longer simply about reclaiming what had been stolen. Now it was about proving to the world and myself that the greatest revenge was success, undeniable and absolute. The next morning, sunlight poured through the tall windows of the Evergreen Inn's elegant, newly refurbished lobby, casting a warm, golden glow over everything. Alex Carter arrived precisely at 9, sharply dressed and projecting an air of quiet authority. As he toured the hotel, His admiration became increasingly apparent, his eyes carefully noting every detail, from the eco-friendly amenities in the guest suites to the carefully curated, locally sourced menu Hannah had meticulously designed. "This place is exceptional," Alex finally said, turning to me with genuine enthusiasm. "I've visited countless hotels, but your vision here, sustainable luxury with true authenticity, is exactly what Elite Escapes is looking for." Relief and pride surged within me simultaneously. "I'm thrilled to hear that. We've poured everything into creating something special, something meaningful." "It shows," Alex nodded approvingly, pulling out a contract from his briefcase. "With Delaney Hotels no longer meeting our standards, we need a fresh face to represent our brand. I'd like the Evergreen Inn to become our flagship partner for sustainable luxury experiences." My pulse raced as I accepted the contract, scanning quickly through the generous terms. "Alex, this partnership could change everything for us." He smiled warmly. "It's already changing the industry. Your grandmother would be proud, Emily." I paused briefly, surprised. "You knew Eleanor?" Alex's expression softened fondly. "My parents stayed at this hotel during its prime years. Eleanor had a reputation, a remarkable businesswoman with extraordinary foresight. She always said her granddaughter would carry her legacy further than anyone imagined." Emotion swelled in my throat as I signed the contract, the gravity of the moment settling over me. Eleanor had envisioned this moment long before I did. Her legacy was finally becoming my own. As Alex departed, Hannah embraced me tightly, her excitement uncontainable. "Emily, you did it. Eleanor was right. This was your destiny all along." Before I could respond, my phone rang, an unfamiliar urgency vibrating insistently. I answered cautiously, hearing a strained voice on the other end. "Emily, it was my father," his tone heavy with desperation. "I need to see you. Blake has done something terrible. Delaney Hotels is finished unless you help us." My heart tightened painfully. "Dad, what could I possibly do now? Blake took everything." "I was wrong," he admitted quietly, his voice cracking slightly. "Emily, please. We need you." I stood silently, the weight of his confession pressing upon me. Hannah touched my arm gently, her eyes filled with quiet understanding. "Tell him to come here," she whispered softly. "Let him see exactly what you've built without him." With a deep breath, I steadied my voice. "Fine, Dad. Meet me at the Evergreen Inn in an hour." But I promised nothing. Ending the call, I stared thoughtfully at the hotel around me, the masterpiece I had created from betrayal and loss. My father had chosen Blake once, believing him capable of greatness while discarding me carelessly. Now he would see firsthand the price of that mistake. But forgiveness would not come easily if it came at all. Exactly 1 hour later, my father arrived, stepping hesitantly through the front door of the Evergreen Inn. He looked older than I remembered, lines of worry etched deeply into his face, his posture lacking the confidence that had once defined him. Standing awkwardly near the lobby entrance, he took in the transformation I'd accomplished, awe and regret mingling painfully in his expression. "Emily," he began quietly, voice strained with genuine remorse, "you've done remarkable things here." I studied him silently, holding back a storm of conflicting emotions. "It's amazing what you can achieve when no one's actively sabotaging you," I finally replied, keeping my voice steady but cold. He flinched slightly, clearly wounded by my words. "You have every right to be angry. I allowed Victoria's ambitions and Blake's empty promises to blind me. I betrayed you, and I'm truly sorry." I hesitated, his apology catching me off guard, sincerity evident in every word. Yet the hurt still lingered sharply beneath my skin. "Dad, why are you really here?" I asked bluntly, unwilling to soften just yet. He sighed heavily, shame and weariness evident in his slumped shoulders. "Blake has destroyed everything. Financial irregularities, scandals involving guest safety, investors are fleeing. The authorities are involved now. were facing bankruptcy within days. My heart tightened. This was far worse than I'd anticipated. What exactly do you expect me to do? Fix the mess Blake created? No, he admitted painfully. It's beyond fixing. But investors trust you. Your reputation is impeccable, Emily. If you publicly endorsed us, perhaps we'd have a fighting chance. I laughed bitterly, shaking my head in disbelief. You want me to stake my reputation, the one you and Blake almost destroyed, on your sinking ship? Why should I help you now? Because Delaney Hotels was meant to be your inheritance, he said desperately, meeting my gaze fully. Because I finally realize how wrong I was. Emily, I'm asking as your father. Please help us. Silence stretched between us, heavy and charged with memories. Finally, I shook my head softly. Dad, you took away everything I'd worked for. You chose Blake, knowing exactly who he was. Now you have to live with those consequences. He nodded slowly, defeat settling in his expression. I understand. You've built something extraordinary here, something I failed to protect. Eleanor was right about everything. He turned to leave, shoulders sagging in resignation. My heart twisted painfully, but I spoke again before he reached the door. Dad, wait. He paused, turning back cautiously. I won't rescue Delaney Hotels, I stated firmly. But when your company collapses, and it will, I promise I'll buy back the Delaney Grand myself. I'll rebuild it and name it after Eleanor. Your legacy won't end with your mistakes. It'll end with her strength, through me. A faint glimmer of pride lit his tired eyes. Eleanor Grand, he echoed softly. That's fitting. She would be proud of you. I nodded gently, my own emotions threatening to surface. She taught me how to turn betrayal into strength. I wish you'd understood that earlier. He left quietly, the heavy door closing softly behind him. Standing alone in the grand lobby of the inn I'd resurrected, I felt a powerful clarity. My revenge was complete, not through anger, but through resilience. My grandmother's legacy was secure, and mine was just beginning. 2 months later, the inevitable happened. Headlines blazed across every major news outlet, announcing the collapse of Delaney Hotels. Blake had vanished overseas, desperately evading the authorities amid mounting criminal investigations. Victoria had retreated into seclusion, her influence shattered overnight. My father, meanwhile, remained behind to face the ruin, his once esteemed name forever stained by scandal and betrayal. True to my word, I quietly arranged to acquire Delaney Grand through a swift, discreet transaction. With Hannah by my side, I stood at the hotel's entrance on the morning we took formal ownership, feeling a deep sense of triumph and closure. It's finally yours, Emily, Hannah whispered softly, pride evident in her voice. Everything you fought for. Not yet, I replied thoughtfully, tracing the elegant, faded gold lettering above the hotel's grand doors. This place needs a new name, a fresh start. Stepping forward decisively, I handed the new nameplate design to the waiting contractors, feeling an overwhelming surge of gratitude toward the woman who'd believed in me from the beginning, Eleanor Delaney. Within hours, Delaney Grand was replaced forever, becoming the Eleanor Grand, a symbol of resilience, determination, and justice. That evening, as the sun dipped low over the city skyline, I invited my father back, allowing him to see what had become of his legacy. He stood quietly, staring upward at the hotel's new name, tears welling subtly in his eyes. You did it, he murmured softly, voice thick with emotion. You've given your grandmother the legacy she deserved, the legacy I nearly destroyed. I studied him carefully, the bitterness that once consumed me now replaced by quiet strength. She gave me something far greater than money or power. She gave me a chance to discover what I'm truly capable of. He nodded gently, regret evident in every line of his face. Emily, I don't expect forgiveness, but I need you to know how deeply sorry I am for everything. I paused, the past replaying briefly in my mind, before extending a hand toward him with quiet grace. I won't forget what happened, Dad, but I won't let anger control me anymore, either. Eleanor believed that real strength lies in moving forward. Maybe we both need to remember that. He grasped my hand gratefully, his eyes glistening with unspoken relief. Together, we stood beneath the glittering lights of Eleanor Grand, each silently acknowledging the painful road we'd traveled separately, yet finally united by hard-earned wisdom. As night settled over the city, I stepped back inside my hotel, where guests already marveled at its elegant rebirth. Eleanor's portrait now hung prominently in the main lobby, her serene, confident smile reminding me daily of how far I'd come, from betrayal and heartbreak to resilience and redemption. My father left quietly, carrying the weight of his choices, but also newfound respect for the daughter he'd once so grievously underestimated. And for me, revenge had transformed into something far sweeter and more powerful. True fulfillment, born from strength and determination rather than anger and bitterness. In the end, my inheritance had never truly been about hotels or wealth, but about discovering the courage within myself to reclaim what was rightfully mine, my dignity, my strength, and my grandmother's legacy. And I knew, deep within my heart, Eleanor Delaney would have been proud. 2 years passed quickly, marked by growth, fulfillment, and profound clarity. Standing proudly at the entrance of the Eleanor Grand on its grand reopening night, I felt a deep, peaceful satisfaction radiating from within. Hannah stood beside me, radiant in her elegant gown, softly laughing with the guests who had come from across the country to celebrate our remarkable success. The hotel was filled with warmth, laughter, and genuine appreciation, a stark contrast to the cold, empty halls Blake and Victoria had created. Blake, I'd learned through whispers in the industry, remained abroad, living in obscurity, stripped of his status and privilege, haunted by the consequences of his actions. Victoria had attempted unsuccessfully to regain her social standing, but had disappeared quietly from the public eye, her name now only a cautionary tale whispered among the city's elite. My father, humbled by his downfall, yet finding redemption in honest labor, had begun consulting small businesses, guiding others away from the mistakes he once made. Our relationship, though never fully restored, had evolved into something quietly respectful, built from scars, honesty, and mutual understanding. As the evening continued, I slipped away briefly, standing alone on the hotel's rooftop terrace, gazing thoughtfully out over the glittering city skyline. In the distance, lights twinkled brightly, mirroring the clarity and strength I'd discovered within myself through hardship and betrayal. For the first time, I truly understood Eleanor's wisdom. Life's greatest lessons rarely came wrapped in comfort. Sometimes we needed to lose everything we thought we wanted, to discover something far greater, our own resilience, dignity, and purpose. My grandmother had known this truth all along, patiently guiding me toward it. If I could share just one piece of wisdom gained through my journey, it would be this: betrayal can destroy you or it can define you. The choice lies solely within your hands. Revenge, I've learned, isn't found in bitterness or anger. True revenge, the sweetest revenge, is building a life so powerful, meaningful, and successful that those who wronged you are forced to witness your unbreakable spirit. As I returned downstairs, stepping confidently into the warmth and joy of Eleanor Grand, I felt Eleanor's presence strongly, smiling proudly upon the legacy we'd built together. This wasn't just revenge. It was redemption. It was triumph. And above all, it was proof that no one can ever take away your value unless you willingly surrender it. I chose never to surrender again, and neither should you. It wasn't the chandeliers or the imported orchids that caught my eye when I walked into the Somerset ballroom that morning. It was her voice, sharp, commanding, echoing across the marble floor like she owned every inch of it. Tinsley Calder, dressed in head-to-toe white like some kind of bridal influencer, stood in the center of the room waving her arms at my staff as if they were stagehands in her personal production. A young server passed by with a tray of wine glasses. She snapped her fingers, not even looking. You there? Those glasses are all wrong. Where's the imported crystal I requested? She spun around dramatically, her eyes scanning the space, and then they landed on me. For a moment, she paused, lips parting in confusion, and then came the smile, not the warm kind, the kind that pulled at the corners of her mouth like a mask she wore too often. Oh, my God, she said, pointing at me with manicured fingers. Can someone get security? There's a homeless woman standing in my event space. My staff froze. The violinist doing sound check actually stopped mid-note. A beat of silence wrapped the room. I didn't speak. I didn't move. I just stood there, perfectly still in the hotel I had built from scratch, brick by bloody brick. The same hotel she had somehow managed to book behind my back, using a third-party vendor, with a fake name on the contract. She's not supposed to be here, Tinsley added, louder this time, her voice rising into a pitch that bordered on theatrical. Get her out. One of my newer employees took a cautious step forward, clearly unsure. That's Miss Calder, he said quietly. Tinsley blinked. Then she laughed. No, sweetheart, she said, brushing her hand through the air like swatting a fly. Vivian Calder doesn't dress like that. Well, she lives in that sad little house by the vineyard, drives that dusty car. You really think she owns this? She spun again for effect, arms wide, like a magician revealing a trick. That was the moment, the one I should have screamed, or maybe cried, but instead I smiled. A small, sharp smile only I understood. Because while Tinsley performed for her imaginary followers, while she basked in attention that didn't belong to her, she had no idea that she'd just made her final mistake. She wasn't trespassing in a hotel. She was trespassing in my story. 1 week earlier, the sun in Napa hung low behind the rolling hills when I pulled into the driveway of my parents' house. The vines across the valley had just begun to bloom, thick with the scent of springtime and a kind of memory I had long tried to forget. The porch light flickered like always, never fixed, always ignored, and for a moment I considered staying in the car. But guilt is a stubborn thing. It doesn't wait for a better time. It just calls and you answer. The front door creaked open before I knocked. My mother stood there in a silk blouse 2 sizes too tight, her smile stretched thin like icing over a dry cake. Vivian, honey, she sang, kissing the air near my cheek. Still wearing black, I see. You know, a little color wouldn't kill you. I forced a smile. Hi, Mom. The smell of baked ham and something burnt wafted through the house. My father was already at the dining table, hunched over his plate like it held a secret. He didn't look up. Dad, I offered. He grunted. That was more than usual. Then I saw her. Tinsley, draped across the love seat like a model mid-shoot, legs crossed, phone tilted just right to catch the light. Her hair was pulled back in a perfect bun, skin glowing with something that didn't come from genetics. Well, well, she said, standing with a slow, practiced grace. Look who finally decided to show her face. The elusive vineyard recluse returns. Did you finish alphabetizing your spreadsheets? Or did your calculator break? I didn't respond. I just stepped around her and sat at the table, across from an empty chair. The dining room was too quiet, the kind of quiet that only happens when a family is pretending. Mother poured wine without asking. Dad kept eating like chewing fast would get him out sooner. And Tinsley, of course, snapped a selfie mid-meal, adjusting her phone angle so my face didn't make the frame. I should have left. But instead, I picked up a piece of bread and tried to believe that this was just another dinner. Then Tinsley clinked her glass. I have something to share, she said, beaming. My 33rd is coming up, and I've decided it's going to be iconic. Kardashian-level iconic. I sipped slowly. I found the perfect rooftop in the valley, she continued. Champagne wall, live jazz, drone footage, even a horse-drawn carriage. Think Paris, but warmer and with better lighting. She paused, letting the room fill with her fantasy. Total cost? Just under 180. I nearly choked. She turned to me, her voice smooth as poison. And you, big sister, get to make it happen. I mean, come on, it's not like you're doing anything real with your money. The room went silent. Even the old clock on the wall seemed to hesitate. I looked at Mom, waiting for her to intervene. She tilted her head. Sweetheart, it really would mean a lot to Tinsley. You've been so blessed lately. Isn't it time you gave a little back? Dad didn't say a word, didn't even blink. That was when it hit me. Not like a revelation, but like a quiet truth finally surfacing. I wasn't family. I was funding. I drove home without turning on the radio. The hum of the engine was the only sound I could stand, steady and unchanging, like the breath I had to remind myself to take. My little house sat tucked between two hills on the edge of the valley, half hidden by olive trees and wild roses I never got around to pruning. The porch light worked here. It always had. Inside, I kicked off my shoes, poured a glass of red, and sat at the kitchen island. No music, no TV, just silence, the kind that stretches out like a blank page and dares you to write something on it. My laptop blinked at me from across the counter, waiting for me to pretend everything was normal. Then my phone buzzed. Aina, check Tinsley's Instagram. I hesitated for exactly 3 seconds before unlocking the screen. And there it was, a video story, a split screen. On the left, Tinsley, wrapped in a designer robe, sipping champagne and laughing with her event planner. The lighting was golden, the music soft and smug. On the right, a video of my car pulling into my driveway. My old Volvo, paint slightly faded from too many summers under the sun. Windows down, my hair pulled back, no makeup. The caption read, "When your rich sister lives like she's in witness protection." I stared. The comments were already rolling in. At least she's not pretending to be someone she's not. That house screams therapy bills. LMFAO, she drives that. My jaw tightened until I thought it might crack. I wanted to say something, to write a long, eloquent post about what it meant to build something from scratch, about nights spent with nothing but coffee and spreadsheets, about how every tile in that hotel had passed through my hands, every beam chosen, every flower planted with intention. But I didn't write a word. I just sat there, staring, as strangers laughed at a life they didn't understand, as my sister turned me into a joke for likes, as the girl I once shared a bunk bed with turned me into entertainment. She thinks this is about a birthday party. She has no idea what she just started. 2 days passed. I ignored every call, every text. Aina even offered to take my phone and throw it into the Napa River, and honestly, I almost let her. But instead, I shut off notifications and buried myself in zoning permits and vendor invoices. I worked like a woman, trying to sand down the edges of her rage. And still the video stayed up. Still the likes climbed. Still, people who didn't know my name reposted it with laughing emojis and hashtags. Aina tapped her fingers on the conference table. She's not going to stop. I know, I said, but she's not the one I'm worried about. She raised an eyebrow, but I didn't explain. Not yet, because I'd seen it coming, not all at once, but in slow pieces, like a leak behind drywall. And now the wall had cracked, and behind it rot. That afternoon, the sky over Napa dimmed behind a layer of silver clouds. I was reviewing vendor contracts when I saw the outline of a woman through the frosted glass of my office door. Familiar posture, too familiar. My stomach sank. Celeste Calder never made appointments. She breezed in like wind through an open gate, arms full, perfume arriving 3 seconds before her. "I thought I'd stop by," she announced, placing a Tupperware of banana bread on my desk. "Still no receptionist? You really ought to make this space more welcoming." I looked up from my screen, forced a smile. "Hey, Mom." She sat down like she owned the chair. "You work too hard," she said, already scanning the room. Just like your father used to, though he was never great with money. You get that from me. I said nothing. Through the glass wall, I could see Aina watching from the hallway. I didn't signal her in. I knew this one I'd have to carry alone. Then my mother reached into her handbag and pulled out a cream envelope. I brought something for you to look at, she said lightly, as if it were a birthday card or a brunch menu. I opened it slowly. It was a printout, a budget breakdown. At the top, Tinsley Calder's 33rd birthday Napa Valley Estate event. Midway down, highlighted in pink, venue contribution. Vivian Calder, $180,000. Confirmed. My throat went dry. Confirmed, I said, my voice sharper than I meant it. Celeste didn't flinch. Sweetheart, she said calmly, let's not make this harder than it needs to be. You know Tinsley doesn't have that kind of money. And your father and I, well, we're on a fixed income now. She humiliated me, I said, jaw tightening, publicly, on purpose. She was being playful, my mother replied. She mocked my life. She's going through a phase. I stared at her. You're really asking me to pay for the person who used me as a punchline? I'm not asking, she said. I blinked. I'm showing you the plan. You've always been the responsible one, Vivian. This is just what's expected. There it was again. That word. Expected. Not requested. Not offered. Not discussed. Just assumed. I picked up the Tupperware. Held it in both hands like a fragile thing. Thanks for the bread, I said flatly, handing it back across the desk. She looked genuinely surprised. Hurt, even. Like I'd slapped her. Don't be like this, Vivian. You're making it so dramatic. I think you've confused the definition of that word, I said. She stood, smoothing the front of her blouse like she'd just closed a deal. Let me know if you want the planner's contact. You're going to love her. Very boutique. Then she turned and walked out, leaving behind the faint scent of roses, guilt and entitlement. I didn't tear the envelope. I didn't scream. I just stood at the window, watching the vineyards sway in the wind, jaw locked in place. They didn't ask. They assumed. They never ask. That night, I didn't turn on the lights. I walked through the house with only the low glow from the hallway sconce. The envelope still sat on my desk, unopened now, but not unread. The banana bread sat wrapped in plastic on the kitchen counter, like a peace offering laced with quiet threat. I poured another glass of wine. My hands were steady, but my chest ached like something had been pressed down on it all day. I tried to work, lease renewals, payroll schedules, event permits, but my fingers wouldn't move. My eyes stayed fixed on the screen until the letters blurred. Then, like smoke curling through a crack in the wall, the memory crept in. I was 10. The hospital sheets were thin, itchy against my legs. Machines beeped softly beside me. I'd caught some kind of virus that flattened me for a week. Mom never left. She curled up in the recliner next to my bed, wrapped in her coat, whispering prayers she thought I couldn't hear. You're the reason I'm strong, she said one night, brushing my hair back from my forehead. You saved me from myself, Vivian. I remember blinking at her, too tired to speak. I thought it was love. The next night, I woke to her whispering again, but not to me. She was on the phone, her voice low but sharp. Furious. We gave up everything for her, she snapped. I quit my job, Martin. You're working night shifts like a damn mule. I don't care what it takes. We are not leaving her in some god-awful facility. She paused, then added, she's all we've got now, so she better be worth it. Then she hung up, and when she turned to me again, her smile was back. Soft, warm, like the words I'd just heard weren't real. We gave up so much for you, sweetheart, she said. Just promise you'll never forget that, okay? I was 10, and I nodded, because I didn't know any better. I thought that was devotion. I didn't understand that it was a contract. Back in the present, I opened the freezer, slid the banana bread inside between the frozen peas and an old bottle of vodka. Close the door, like sealing a tomb. I'm not your debt to collect, I whispered. I'm not your redemption story. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. But for the first time in a long time, I felt something solid under my feet. Like the ground had stopped shifting. Like maybe I wasn't the broken one. I used to think being needed meant being loved. Now I'm not so sure. The next morning, I was at my desk before dawn, the vineyards outside still cloaked in shadow. I hadn't slept, not really, but for the first time I felt awake, alert. Something had shifted in me, a clarity that sliced through doubt like a blade through silk. My inbox blinked impatiently with unread emails, client inquiries, vendor confirmations, requests for tastings, but none of it seemed important now. I was staring at the screen, eyes narrowed, when Aina walked into my office holding a thick, cream-colored envelope. "Courier dropped this off," she said, setting it down carefully as if it might bite. "From Tinsley's fiancé's assistant. Marked urgent. Addressed to you personally." I didn't speak as I opened it. Heavy, embossed paper, gold trim. The kind of document made to impress or intimidate. My fingers stilled as I read. Family Contact assumes responsibility for all unpaid balances, fees, and penalties, including legal and collection costs. I laughed. Short, dry. She really thought I wouldn't read this. Aina crossed her arms. She thought guilt would sign it for you. My hand tightened on the contract, not enough to wrinkle it, just enough to feel its resistance. I stayed quiet, staring at the bold print. Anger surged through my chest, not hot, but cold and precise, like the edge of a knife left in ice. Slowly, deliberately, I slid the entire packet into the bottom drawer of my desk. Aina raised an eyebrow. "You're keeping it?" "Evidence," I replied calmly. She handed me the weapon herself. "Let's keep it sharp." I opened a fresh email, addressed it clearly to Tinsley's fiancé's assistant, and typed just one line. "Unsolicited contracts will not be acknowledged. V. Calder." I hit send without hesitation, my heart steady. Then, without another word, I opened my calendar, scrolling to next week, creating a new recurring event titled Monitor Financial Setups Family. Aina smiled slightly, understanding without needing explanation. "Paper trail." "A mountain," I answered softly, returning her gaze. It wasn't revenge, not yet. It was simply strategy, the first move on a chessboard they didn't even know existed. I leaned back in my chair, watching the vineyards slowly brighten as the morning sun broke over the hills. The world outside kept moving, unaware of the silent war beginning in a quiet hotel office in Napa. This wasn't about family anymore. It wasn't even about the money. It was about finally drawing the line between what they expected and what I was willing to give. And this time I was done giving quietly. Saturday morning broke, gently over Napa, sunlight spilling softly across Somerset's elegant facade. Everything felt quiet, almost serene, but inside, a storm was already brewing. I stood at the reception desk, eyes scanning the morning's bookings, when Aina rushed over, her face clouded with worry. "Vivian," she said, voice tense, "did you authorize a private event next weekend?" "No," I replied slowly. "I haven't touched next weekend's calendar." Aina's eyebrows knitted tightly as she turned the screen toward me. My eyes froze on the entry, marked clearly, client name, SC3. My stomach twisted into a cold knot. "She wouldn't," I whispered, more to myself than Aina. Aina tilted her head. "She might." We hurried to the back office, pulling up records, tracing through the bookings made via third-party agencies. My fingers flew across the keyboard, scrolling rapidly until we landed on the reservation confirmation. It was all there, every outrageous detail. Ice sculptures imported from Europe, candles flown in from Provence, even a special sound permit for live music. And under contact details, disguised carefully yet carelessly obvious, SC3 Productions, Tinsley Calder. My breath caught sharply. She booked my own hotel, right under my nose. Aina's gaze hardened. She's counting on you backing down in public. My jaw tightened, a quiet, controlled rage simmering beneath the surface. Then let's make sure she earns every inch of it. From the security room, we watched footage from yesterday afternoon. Tinsley strutting confidently through the ballroom, waving directions at her event planner. Her movements dramatic, exaggerated for her imaginary audience, acting like she owned the very ground beneath her feet. She has no idea she's being recorded, Aina muttered quietly. I leaned back, arms crossed tightly, never once taking my eyes off the screen. She thinks I won't dare challenge her openly. Aina glanced at me, understanding dawning across her features. What are you thinking? I took a slow breath, feeling something lock firmly into place inside me. Document everything. Every interaction, every demand, every insult. I want a file so thick it speaks louder than any denial. She nodded once, decisive. Consider it done. We stepped back into the foyer just as the morning bridal brunch began to fill the room with soft laughter and gentle chatter. They moved in quiet celebration, blissfully unaware of the battle quietly unfolding behind closed doors. This wasn't about candles or contracts anymore. It wasn't even about a birthday party. It was about control, about who really owned the name on the gate. And this time, Tinsley had crossed the wrong line. She had unknowingly given me exactly what I needed, a stage, an audience, and a reason. I would not shout, I would not scream, but the message would be unmistakable. She thought she was untouchable. She was about to find out she was wrong. 2 days later, the Somerset ballroom glittered under 1,000 tiny lights. Orchids cascaded elegantly along marble banisters. Golden chairs gleamed beneath ivory linens, and waiters in crisp uniforms moved gracefully through the crowd, carrying trays of champagne. It was perfect, almost painfully so. From my vantage point above the terrace, hidden from view, I watched as Tinsley swept through the grand entrance. Cameras flashed like miniature stars orbiting her. She smiled broadly, her gown shimmering as she waved casually at the carefully curated crowd. Reporters leaned in, eager for her words. The chandeliers were imported from Austria, she said proudly, voice ringing clear and bright. Everything you see here was personally curated. You don't find quality like this just anywhere. A young journalist raised her hand eagerly. And who owns this stunning venue, Miss Calder? Tinsley hesitated, just a heartbeat too long. We have connections, she answered vaguely, eyes darting slightly. Let's just say the owner prefers discretion. That was my cue. I adjusted the cuffs of my navy blazer, straightened my spine, and walked down the grand staircase. Each step calm, deliberate, undeniable. Heads began to turn, whispers following in my wake. Tinsley's confident posture faltered, eyes widening slightly as I approached. The room grew quiet enough to hear the gentle clink of crystal glasses set down hurriedly onto tables. Actually, I said clearly, softly enough to force everyone to lean in, the owner is standing right here. Tinsley's face drained of color, her lips parting silently. Cameras shifted focus immediately, lenses aimed at me like arrows seeking a target. A distinguished woman stepped forward, curious yet reserved. You own this venue? She asked with polite skepticism. Yes, I replied evenly. A smart businesswoman doesn't wear her assets on her sleeve. She builds them brick by brick and lets them speak for themselves. The woman smiled approvingly, her expression shifting from curiosity to respect. How refreshing. It's rare these days to see true discretion paired with genuine success. I inclined my head slightly, accepting the subtle compliment. Around us, the energy had shifted dramatically. Guests murmured appreciatively, turning their backs slowly on Tinsley's glittering facade. In that instant, her carefully constructed illusion crumbled, revealed for what it was, nothing but smoke and mirrors. Tinsley stepped forward abruptly, desperate to regain control. This is some kind of misunderstanding, she stammered, voice shaking. No misunderstanding, Aina interjected calmly, stepping forward with quiet authority. Miss Vivian Calder owns Somerset outright. She built it entirely herself. Tinsley's eyes pleaded silently, but I offered no comfort, no rescue. Vivian, she whispered, almost inaudibly, the name breaking on her lips. I met her gaze steadily, without anger, without pity. You wanted the spotlight, I said simply. Now it's yours. The room was silent as Tinsley backed away, makeup smudged, facade shattered. Reporters scribbled notes furiously. Guests exchanged whispers behind raised hands. I turned slowly toward the crowd, composed and unshakable, feeling their respect like sunlight warming my skin. I hadn't needed revenge. The truth had done it for me. Later that night, I returned home and turned off every light except the soft glow above the kitchen sink. Shadows filled the house, comforting rather than empty. The silence felt different now. It wasn't the kind that choked you, but the kind you chose, the kind earned by walking away clean. As I poured myself a cup of tea, the phone buzzed softly against the counter. The caller ID read Dad. For a moment, I considered ignoring it, but something urged me to answer. When I picked up, his voice came through hesitant, weary. Vivian, he began carefully, like stepping onto thin ice. Your mother is upset. I didn't respond. He took a shaky breath. We just want the family to stay intact. Intact? I echoed softly. It's never been intact, Dad. It's been built around Tinsley like a house of cards. He didn't deny it. Silence filled the line again, heavy and fragile. Finally, I spoke gently. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just done. You don't mean that, he whispered. I do. I hung up gently, sliding the phone into the drawer beside the sink, closing it like sealing a quiet goodbye. The distant lights of Napa blinked softly outside the window, small islands of warmth in the darkness. Music drifted faintly from a vineyard tasting room down the road, melancholy and comforting. I stood still for a long while, feeling something new and unfamiliar settle deep within my chest. Not sadness, not joy, just a steady, quiet sense of freedom. My phone buzzed again, a text this time. My hand reached out slowly, half expecting another argument. But instead I found a message that stopped me cold. You were right. I should have stood up. I'm sorry, Dad. I read it 5 times. Then, slowly, deliberately, I deleted it. But as I did, a quiet smile touched my lips. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, nor was it bitterness. It was simply acceptance, something lighter, clearer, sharper. I used to think revenge would taste sweet, like victory or triumph. But it didn't. It tasted like this, a peaceful, quiet exhale, releasing years of guilt that were never mine. Somerset continued to thrive. Bookings flooded in faster than ever before. News outlets sniffed around for interviews. And Aina joked that we'd soon need another location just to handle demand. And yet, none of it felt frantic anymore. Everything felt clear, deliberate, unhurried. Late that night, out of sheer curiosity, I checked Tinsley's social media. Her latest video was muted, stripped of the glamour she once wore like armor. No filters, no background music, just raw silence. I didn't watch all of it, not because I couldn't, but because I didn't need to. I closed the app, turned my phone face down, and took another sip of tea. Maybe that was the real revenge, not winning, not defeating someone else, but choosing myself quietly without explanation. Maybe peace isn't when they finally treat you right. Maybe it's when you start treating yourself like you matter. Sitting alone in the soft darkness of my kitchen, I let the silence wrap around me like an old, familiar blanket. The teacup had long since cooled in my hands, yet I held on to it anyway, absorbing its comfort. Outside, Napa slept under a moonless sky, vineyards resting quietly, waiting patiently for dawn. In the calm stillness, I finally understood something that had eluded me my whole life. It wasn't the betrayal or humiliation that had hurt most. It wasn't the way they'd turned my life into a punchline, or even how they'd tried to rewrite my story without my consent. No, it was how easily I'd allowed it. How I'd carried guilt that never belonged to me, paying debts I never owed, chasing acceptance I never needed. All these years, I'd mistaken being needed for being loved, trading my peace for their approval, never noticing that the price kept rising, while my value seemed to shrink. But not anymore. My fingers reached slowly for the drawer beside the sink, pulling out my phone. One more time, I opened the message Dad had sent earlier, the apology he'd never before offered. "You were right. I should have stood up. I'm sorry." I read the words quietly once more, feeling their weight, letting them settle inside my chest. Then, gently but firmly, I deleted it again, not out of anger or resentment, but because I no longer needed anyone else's validation to confirm my worth. Outside, the valley began waking softly beneath the first rays of sunlight. Birds whispered softly in the olive trees, a gentle rustle of leaves greeting the morning. Somerset would soon fill with the quiet hum of staff preparing for another busy day, another wedding, another celebration of life that had nothing to do with proving anything to anyone. And that was the victory, the quiet kind, the kind that doesn't demand applause or validation, the kind found in small gestures, in moments spent alone, realizing you're enough. I stood slowly, rinsing the empty cup in the sink, watching the water spiral gently down the drain. If there's one thing I've learned through all this, it's that peace isn't loud or dramatic. It's quiet, subtle. It comes not when the world finally decides you matter, but when you decide that yourself. Maybe you've carried guilt too, debts of gratitude placed on your shoulders without your permission. Maybe you've stood quietly while others rewrote your story, but the pen is still yours. It always has been. This isn't just my truth. It's yours too. Have you ever carried guilt that was never yours to begin with? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear your truth. And if this story resonated with you, type 1 or let me know where you're watching from. If it didn't connect, that's okay. Drop a comment and share why. Was it the message, the pace, or the ending? Because here's the truth. Peace doesn't arrive when others finally see your worth. It arrives the moment you do. And that, my friends, is the sweetest revenge of all.